Thank you again, everyone, for joining. This is Anna Galland. I'm the Executive Director here at MoveOn.org, and I am so excited. I think this is just an incredibly important event that we're convening tonight to be here with you for this emergency briefing with Senator Elizabeth Warren about the student debt crisis in this country and the ways that we are going to be taking action in support of Senator Warren's Bank on Students Loan Forgiveness Act in the next few weeks. So first, a quick note for those folks with us who are live tweeting this call or looking to ask a question of Senator Warren. The hashtag that we'll be using tonight is BankOnStudents. And please do tweet early and often. We have a huge crowd with us here, but we want to spread the word even beyond this group. So again, the hashtag we'll be using tonight for discussion, questions, if you want to pose one to Senator Warren, is BankOnStudents. Now, since Senator Warren launched her MoveOn petition to provide students with the same loan rates as banks get in our country, we have seen just this incredible response. So over 435,000 people have signed her petition, and tonight on this call we expect over 11,000 people. We're joined by over 10,000 MoveOn members, but also by tens of thousands of our allies from the Working Families Party, and we are so pleased to be working closely with the United States Student Association, and there are over 2,000 high school and college students who are also here with us tonight. So it's an incredible gathering. Thank you for joining. And we know from the thousands of stories that have been shared in just the last few days by MoveOn members RSVPing for this call, it's just so crystal clear that the student debt crisis is way more than just another policy issue. It's a real visceral problem that is affecting our daily lives. So I think we all know students who are wondering if they can afford to stay in college for the full 4 years. We know parents of students who are balancing student loan payments with their mortgage and their car bills. And I think we all know graduates who are struggling now to pay back debt while they find a well-paying job in our struggling economy. So tonight we're going to be talking about what we can do to turn this crisis around with our special guest, the champion on student loan reform in the U.S. Senate, Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. So to give you a sense of what to expect on this briefing, we're going to hear from Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren, about her Bank on Students Loan Fairness Act and how and why we can take action to support it in our own congressional districts. So we'll hear from the University of Oregon student leader, who's tremendous, named Alexandra Flores-Quilty, who's organizing with thousands of other students around the country to end the student debt crisis. And we'll hear from a MoveOn leader, an incredible catalyst for this movement, named Robert Applebaum. His essay on student debt helped spark a national conversation on this issue almost 4.5 years ago, and since then he has really been at the forefront of this struggle. So around the 20-minute mark of our briefing tonight, Senator Warren will take your questions, which again you can submit by tweeting BankOnStudents. And please do stay with us to the very end so you can hear about the next steps in this campaign, including some of the ways that you can help to shape it and lead it. And again, just one more plug for the tweet here. The hashtag we'll be using for our discussion tonight is BankOnStudents. And so I'm honored now to introduce our keynote for this emergency briefing, Senator Elizabeth Warren. I think Senator Warren really needs very little introduction, but I do want to just say, Senator Warren, how grateful our 8 million MoveOn members across the country are, including all those in Massachusetts, for your leadership on student loan forgiveness and for standing up to the big banks. This is one of many issues that we believe are of deep importance to working families, and we are just so motivated and energized to work with you to support the Bank on Students Loan Fairness Act and to stand with you in the fight to end the student debt crisis once and for all. So with that, I will turn it right over to Senator Warren.
Well, thank you very much, Anna. I really appreciate it, and I want to say thank you to MoveOn. You guys have just been incredible. You've been there all through. First, the fights, the first place we started working very much was during the bank bailouts, trying to bring some accountability to that process, and then the fight to get the consumer agency, and then trying to help stand up that consumer agency and defend it while it was being born, and then throughout my Senate race. And so I owe many, many thank yous to MoveOn and to all the partners that MoveOn has brought into many of our fights together. And I am so glad to hear that we have lots and lots of people on this call. I'm going to go over some of the key points on student loans. I know lots of people on the call will have them, but we can We can never say them enough because they are so important. We are facing a deadline. What will happen at the beginning of next month, July 1st, is that student loan interest rates on new loans will double from 3.4% to 6.8% unless Congress acts. And so we've got the deadline staring us down, and that's a good point for us to get organized. You know, I know a lot of students around Massachusetts, students all around this country, and I hear the same story over and over. Students worked hard, they played by the rules, they finished school so they could give themselves a real chance, and now they're unable to move forward because they are drowning in student loan debt. And I think this is just fundamentally wrong. I talked to students all during my campaign about this, and I said, if I get to the United States Senate, I will make it a priority to work on this, and that's exactly what I'm doing now. You know, the student loan debt crisis is truly a crisis. It is a huge problem. It is a growing problem. As you know now, the Consumer Agency has documented, and others have now documented, that the combined student loan debt in the United States is more than $1 trillion, more than total credit card debt that all people everywhere in the United States owe. That the average debt for a student borrower is nearly $25,000, and of course, average really doesn't hit it here. It's also that students, there are many students who have much more debt than that, and students who have struggled with this debt. It's a crisis that hurts everyone. When young people are struggling to pay huge student loans, it undermines their financial security, but it also prevents them from buying homes, from saving for retirement, or engaging in consumption. In other words, the basic things that keep our economic engine moving forward. This is about individuals. It's also about our economy. And this means that unless we take action before July 1st to avoid the interest rate hike on federally subsidized Stafford loans, Congress is going to make a bad problem a lot worse. But even as students struggle to cope with the burden of big student loan interest rates, the government gives certain borrowers a much better bargain. If a big bank needs to take out a loan today from the Federal Reserve discount window, it can get a generous 0.75% interest rate. That's 0.75%. You know, these are the same banks that cost millions of Americans their jobs and nearly broke the economy. And a student who takes out a loan later this summer, if Congress doesn't act, will have to pay 9 times as much on her debt as a big bank would. It isn't right, it isn't fair, and it isn't good economic policy. So that's why I recently introduced my first standalone bill in the United States Senate. This is Bank on Student Loan Fairness Act that Anna was just talking about. And the idea is pretty straightforward. It says students should have access to the same great deal that we give out to banks. The bill says, for anyone who doesn't know the details on it, for 1 year we would set the interest rate for new federally subsidized Stafford loans at the primary interest rate that the banks get at the Federal Reserve discount window as of July 1st. Now, I don't kid myself. This is not a cure-all for all the problems that students face, but it does provide students a much-needed break as we work on longer-term solutions to solve the student debt crisis. We should not be punishing students for Congress's inaction. So I want to get this bill through, and the way I see it is it's a foot in the door. It's a way for us to get started on doing what we need to do. Now, not everyone agrees with this approach. You may have seen that the Republicans in the House of Representatives have passed their own student loan bill. However, this student loan bill, instead of lowering interest rates, actually would require students to pay more. The House bill is using the July 1st deadline as an opportunity to overhaul interest rates on all student loans. They want to put in place a system under which the federal government would profit even more from the student loan program. So I believe that we need to reform the student loan program, but we need changes that adhere to our values and that benefit our students. This isn't going to happen overnight. For now, we need a short-term solution that stops the rates from doubling in just a few weeks. So here's how I think this is going to go. Next week, I believe it will be next week, the Senate's going to vote on a bill to extend the current 3.4% interest rate for 2 more years. Senator Reid and Senator Harkin are co-sponsors of that bill. I've joined them as a co-sponsor on the bill because I believe it's a step in the right direction that makes sure that the student loan interest rate does not double. This is going to be a tough fight. There are a lot of policymakers, there are a lot of folks in Congress who are set on ensuring that the student loans remain a profit center for the federal government. We have got to show Congress that this is an issue that matters and that students want the support of their senators and their representatives. So the government is scheduled to make $51 billion in profits on the loans it makes next year. They're going to make more than 36 cents in profit for every dollar they lend out. Proposals like the House bill would make even more money at the expense of our students. My view is we should not be profiting off students while they're struggling to get a good education. We need to see education as an investment. We don't offer financial aid to students because it's a quick way for the government to make a buck. We do it because it is a smart investment in the future and because it's the right thing to do. So that's why I'm talking to you today. That's what I'm fighting for. And that's why I am so glad to have as many partners as we can get involved in this. And I just think it's terrific that MoveOn is taking the lead on this. So with that, Anna, I'm here. I'll answer. I think you said you want some other people to speak, and then I'll answer whatever questions you want me to answer.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Senator Warren, for that briefing and update. And yes, indeed, we'll have some time to take questions which are being submitted. We'll actually first start with a quick reminder that after the question and answer with Senator Warren, we'll be hearing from 2 really, really fantastic speakers, including a rising student organizing star named Alexandra Flores-Quilty, who's going to be telling us about what students are doing around the country to organize on this issue. So stay with us after the Q&A for that. But first, I'd like to throw it over for a question right here on the call, on the briefing, from Tom Leadham in Oregon with our first question.
Well, thank you for doing this, Senator Warren. I'm Tom Leadham. I'm from Oregon. I'm a board member of the Oregon Working Families Party and also the leader of Teamsters Local 206. I hear from members of our union all the time. They're concerned about how they'll pay for college for their kids. 20 years ago, good union jobs could put members' kids through college. Today, wages are stagnant, but even with jobs that haven't changed that much, college is out of reach for working-class families. And that's why the Working Families Party is leading the campaign for debt-free higher education here in Oregon. So my question, Senator Warren, is how can we make Congress see that student debt affects entire families, not just young people?
Well, it's a good way to frame it, Tom, and I just want to say how glad I am to hear from you, to hear the way you frame the issue, because you put it exactly the right way. There was a time when if you worked hard, you were going to be able to make it. You were going to be able to have a pretty secure economic future, build a strong middle-class life without a college education. And that has gotten a whole lot tougher. Today it's the case that in order to make it, it takes college, it takes advanced technical training, it takes more education post-high school. And that's what it takes to keep our economy strong and going. That's what it takes for individual families. And yet, increasingly what we've done is we've shuffled this burden off onto each individual family and said to them, in effect, load up on debt to figure out how to pay for it. And I think that's just fundamentally the wrong approach. I think we need to invest in our kids. We need to invest in people getting an education. That's going to be a payoff for the whole economy. It's going to be a payoff for those people individually. It's good for all of us. And I say that because I'll just go back to the point I made earlier. We make investments in large financial institutions every day. We lend them money at very low interest rates because we say it's important to our economy. Okay, if that's the case, we should be doing the same for our kids. So, Tom, your question was, how do we persuade Congress this is the case? We do it by what we're doing right now. You guys are terrific organizers. You all are connected in about a zillion different ways. This is one for which we just have to keep pushing back on Congress. You all have senators. You all have representatives. You should be in touch with them every single day about this issue. I know that MoveOn is going to have some great ideas for how we're going to do this, but I have to tell you, this one is true grassroots organizing, grassroots democracy. You can't do this by having a few people stand up in the United States Senate and a few people in the House and say, we think this is important. It's just not enough to move this place. This is going to be the test of whether or not we can organize something at the grassroots and move it forward. And so that's what it's going to take. It's going to take us on this call. It's going to take a whole lot more people. We've got to show them that we understand why it matters, that it does matter, and that they have got to respond. They have got to make the right changes. So that's how I see this one. We've all got to do this one together, Tom.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Senator Warren. We're going to take a couple of questions that are submitted on time until we run out of time with Senator Warren in about another 10 minutes or so. So Rhonda in Los Angeles, California, and Wayne in Clemont, Delaware were among many thousands who sent in some version of this question. What about those who already have student loans that are out of control?
Boy, I am there. And the answer is, this bill is not going to fix that. We're just not there yet. This is the bill we're sticking in because we're coming upon a deadline. But let me make two parts clear going forward. We have two big tasks in front of us. One is around dealing with the student loan debt that is already out there, about refinancing student loan debt, about finding ways to get that debt down and under control, and we've got to do it. I see this as an emergency. We have got to do it. We've got to do it for our families. We've got to do it for our economy. We've got to do it because it's right. The second half, I'll just go ahead and put out there right now. We are going to have to deal with the rising cost of college. It is not enough just to deal with student loans. We have got to attack the rising cost of college head on. And I've said this all along, but both of those questions, the question of how we're going to do that and how we're going to refinance the student loans that are out there and bring those debts down, those are just going to take more time. It's not one we can solve in a matter of a few weeks. What we've got to do right now is get organized for this July 1st deadline, but I don't want to kid anybody on this call. If we make it and we get the student loan rate down and it doesn't double come July 1st, we're not through. This is a foot in the door so we can make the changes we need to make. And I understand a lot of the people who are going to give put the wind in the sails for making this happen are people who are already out of college and who are struggling with their student loans. I regard the July 1st deadline as our down payment, our first step. But we've got to go to the question of student loan debt that lots of people are carrying out there. So I promise I'll still be there with you on this. We will work on this one together. It's just going to take us some time.
Hear, hear. So Donna from Macon, Georgia, wrote in asking, what are the possibilities that, Senator Warren, that you can persuade your Republican colleagues to come on board with this effort, and how can their constituents, so many of our, over 10,000 listeners right now, how can the constituents of Republican members of Congress actually help in the effort to persuade them to support your bill?
Okay, so that's a good question, because when Donna first said, how am I going to do it, the answer is, I'm not going to do this by myself. I'm not in this by myself. That's why we're on this call together. That's why we're connected to each other all across this country. We have to do this together. And I'll tell you how you're going to persuade. We're going to persuade Republican senators and Republican members of Congress. We're going to call them. We're going to email them. We're going to tweet. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it every time they show up at a place where they've got a public meeting. We're going to stand up And we've got to say this issue matters. Now, here's the good news. Congress was last week not in session, and so everybody was back in their home jurisdictions. And tonight we had a vote in the United States Senate, and so I went down to the floor to vote. Everybody comes in kind of late on Mondays when this happens, and people walked by me, and everybody said, while I was home, what people kept asking me about is how we're going to pay for the college loans. Are we going to let the interest rates double? What are we going to do about the college debt that's already out there? What are we going to do about the rising cost of college? In other words, you've already started this conversation. And, yeah, I was hearing that mostly from Democrats because those are the people who walked by and spoke to me about it. But you better believe we make Republicans hear that, too. We make independents hear that, too. Struggling with student loan debt should not be a partisan issue. It should be an issue about what's right and what's wrong. It should be an issue about our values. It should be an issue about investing in our economy. It should be an issue about investing in our future by investing in educating our kids. And I think that's how we just get out there. We tell people it's important. If it's important to you and important enough that you get in touch with your senator, with your congressperson, you show up at meetings, you get your friends to do that, believe me, it becomes important to them too. That's how this one works.
Perfect. Those are amazing opportunities, and at the end of this call, we're going to have some more information about ways that folks can make their voices heard with their members of Congress, whoever they may be. So we have two similar questions from via Twitter from Dunn Law Offices and Michelle P123, which are, when will any meaningful legislation affecting private student loans be passed, and could your bill include private loans?
So this bill, the one that's coming up to the July 1st deadline, no, it doesn't deal with private student loans at all. But, as I said, I think of it as a foot in the door. When we deal with a more comprehensive bill, private student loans are something we certainly should be talking about. So it's got to be part of a bigger bill. And that's just going to take us more time, and that's going to mean it's harder. We've got to keep up the energy. We've got to keep up the push. But that's what it's going to take to get big and meaningful change.
Yep, got it. And then our last question for you is from Judy in Seattle, who asks thoughtfully, is anyone really listening to us in Washington? It seems like this fight is an uphill battle against the big banks and universities. I think we could all use a dose of inspiration. And she asks, I think, again, what can we do?
So, Judy, this is, I really want you to hear me about this evening. Walking onto the floor of the Senate and having people say to me, I was at home and nobody wanted to hear about, and they named all the other things that they think people in the press are talking about. They wanted to talk about college, about how our kids are being crushed by student loan debt. So the answer is, do they hear that there's something going on here? You bet they do. They're hearing that something's going on. Now, what we have to do is we just have to turn up the volume from there. This is an issue that has gotten enough people organized across this country, enough people saying, this just isn't right, what we're doing. This isn't right to be profiting from our kids. It's gotten enough people engaged. I really do feel hopeful that we can do something, and we can do something that's meaningful. Like I said, I don't kid myself. You got it exactly right. It's going to be an uphill battle. There are lots of forces that will both directly attack and that will just inertia. Hard to get something through. On the other hand, some things are worth fighting for. And I guarantee if we don't fight for it, then it just gets worse. So I don't see any choice here. We fight for it because it's right. We fight for it because we care. And I truly do believe if we fight hard enough, there may be some setbacks. It may take some time. But we're going to get it to a better place because we have to. Because this is fundamentally what's right for our people. It's fundamentally what's right for our economy. It's what we do together. If we can't do this, then we've got a problem with democracy. A fundamental problem. So I'll put in one more pitch to you. Let me see if I can persuade you one more way. There were big banks lined up against the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I read it over and over, that it was dead on arrival. It would never happen. It couldn't happen. It wasn't going to happen. How did we ultimately get a consumer agency? We didn't get a consumer agency because a whole bunch of people in Congress said, we just think this is a great idea. We're going to push it through. We got it because MoveOn, because other groups got involved and said, we're going to push for this until we get it. And that's how we got people in Congress moving. It fundamentally changed my view of the world. I came to see that if enough people get involved, if enough people push hard enough, and we do it smart enough, and we do it determinedly enough, we really can make a difference. So I'm in this one all the way, and I hope everybody on this call is too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Senator Warren. We had a huge amount of questions coming in from over 10,000 people with us right now. So we'll have more opportunities this month to keep talking and planning together to help address the questions and ideas and everything that folks are raising over Twitter. And I just want to thank you again, Senator Warren, for joining us, for the powerful remarks here, for your palpable energy and insight and all your leadership in the Senate. We are just so grateful and eager to work alongside you to restore fairness to the student loan system in the weeks and months and years ahead. So thank you for joining us. I know you're going to be taking off now, and we're grateful for your time.
I will. Thanks, Anna, so much for putting this together, and thanks to every one of you who's in on this call. And please stay in there while Anna gives you more about what we can do together. But we're going to stay in touch because we're going to do this together. We're going to fight shoulder to shoulder on this one. Thank you, Anna.
Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye. And with that, I'll turn it over. As Senator Warren said, please stay with us to hear about what you can do. And I'm going to start by turning it over, as we get into that section of our briefing, to turn it over for a few words from Alexandra Flores-Quilty. She's a student in Oregon. She's a very thoughtful and important leader with the United States Student Association. She'll be talking with us about what this means from the student perspective. Alexandra.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Alexandra Flores-Quilty, and I'm a junior at the University of Oregon, where I study public policy and philosophy. This week I'm actually finishing up my spring term, and I'm in the process of taking my finals right now. Despite the very busy time, it is important to me that I be engaged in decisions around higher education that will directly affect my life and the lives of millions of students across the country. I sit on the U.S. Student Association's board of directors as a Pacific Northwest regional representative, where for the last year I've been working with students from across the country and with the Working Families Party, fighting to make education, higher education, more affordable and accessible. Going to college was really important for both myself and my family. My older sister had tried to work and go to school at the same time and not take out any student loan. However, these days, between the skyrocketing cost of tuition, state disinvestment in post-secondary education, and a decline in need-based aid, that is no longer an option. My sister, like so many other students, was forced to drop out, or as I like to put it, pushed out. So for me and my family, it was really important that I did go to college, and I do graduate, even if that means I graduate with over $41,000 in debt from student loans, which is now what I'm up to. My experience is not exclusive to just me. On a daily basis, I hear and meet students who are collecting a lifetime's worth of debt. Even worse, the interest rate on our student loans is 9 times that of the big banks. These same banks that cost millions of Americans their jobs and nearly wrecked our economy. Taxpayer money should not be used to give big banks low interest rates. Instead, it should give every American the tools to be able to afford a decent education. The only thing that every American shares in is their desire to make a better life for themselves and their family. By banking on us, as students, as well as our education, Congress will not only hold true to American values, but simultaneously stimulate our economy. The Bank on Student Loan Fairness Act by Senator Warren, which would lower the interest rate on subsidized Stafford loans to 0.75%, is the solution that students need. The U.S. Student Association came out last week in support of Senator Warren's bill because we believe that a 3.4 interest rate or anything higher is not fair and is not affordable. There is no word to describe what is happening right now with student loans in our country but a crisis. This is the time to mobilize and to fix the problem that students today have inherited. We are not the reason why college is so expensive, or why our states continue to disinvest in post-secondary education, or why we are in the economy we are in now. Students will, however, be the ones who fight to fix it, and we will succeed with the help and the leadership of people like Senator Elizabeth Warren. You may not hear on the news that there are thousands of students organizing together every day, doing civil disobedience, demanding change from our colleges and from the government. Over the next month, students will be organizing actions at commencement ceremonies and graduation ceremonies and calling on their university presidents to support Senator Warren's act. To sign the petition I started, you can go on to bankonusnow.org. And to start a petition directed at your university president, you can go on to signon.org. Students have been organizing and will continue to organize until we make education accessible and affordable for all. So long as every day a student defaults on their loan, so long as every day students are being forced to choose between education and a lifetime worth of debt, and so long as students, like my sister, are priced out and pushed out of a college education, we will continue to fight for what we were told was the American dream.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. And I'm going to turn it right over to Robert Applebaum, who I mentioned earlier, one of the pioneers in this struggle, to share his story on why this matters.
Thanks, Anna. Hello, everybody. My name is Robert Applebaum, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of StudentDebtCrisis.org. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to fundamental reforms to the way in which higher education is paid for in America. I started this nonprofit in part because of the success of the various petitions in favor of student loan reform I initiated on MoveOn petitions. Last year, working as a part-time temporary legislative assistant to former Representative Hanson Clark, I helped draft what was ultimately introduced in the House of Representatives as H.R. 4170, the Student Loan Forgiveness Act of 2012. Immediately after that bill was introduced, I started a new petition in favor of it that eventually reached over 1.2 million signatures. As such, I know firsthand how important it is to make our voices heard, to get the powers that be in Washington to listen. I'm here this evening to stress the importance of not only Senator Warren's bill, but the larger fight for student loan reform. As you know, there is over $1.1 trillion in outstanding student loan debt owed by more than 37 million Americans who did absolutely nothing wrong other than to seek to better themselves and to better contribute to society by seeking out a higher education. Now, many of those people, about 60% of whom are over the age of 30, by the way, are suffering in the wake of the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression. As a result of these debts, they're delaying major life decisions, such as buying a house or a car, starting a small business, or starting a family. The effects of this crisis are being felt across the economy, and if we do absolutely nothing, this problem will only grow worse. Senator Warren's bill is an extremely important step towards ensuring that we don't reach $2 trillion or more in outstanding student loan debt. But we still need to deal with the ever-growing crisis of those already saddled with exorbitant amounts of student loan debt. Many of you on this call are on my mailing list, and as you know, I've been pushing hard to get as many of you involved in this particular battle over the looming interest rate hike on federal subsidized effort loans, even though some of you have already graduated and therefore won't be directly affected by the looming rate hike. I think it's extremely important that we stand in solidarity with current and future students to make sure that we never reach that $2 trillion mark. Everyone on this call needs to know that their voices are being heard. We need all of you making as much noise as possible. We need you to continue to sign petitions, to fill out surveys, to submit complaints, and to talk to reporters. It is vitally important that you share your stories, not only with lawmakers and members of the press, but with friends, families, neighbors, and coworkers as well. We need all to be actively engaged and educated the public about the perils of the ever-growing student loan debt crisis. For those of you on this call who won't be affected by the looming interest rate hike, I want to assure you that your voices are just as important in this debate as any others. Every single victory we achieve shows the power of collective action on this issue, and anything that chips away at the status quo is a victory. The more we work together on these individual campaigns, the better our chances to achieve victory on the larger issues. And finally, I want to reiterate the importance of telling your stories to members of Congress, the press, your local newspapers, and anywhere else you can make your voices heard. One of the most important things we can do together is to put human faces on the growing student debt crisis. We are not just numbers on a piece of paper. We are all Americans, and we are all in this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, all of our amazing speakers here. And so I am feeling incredibly touched and motivated by these stories, and it is hard to sort of imagine how we got to this place where we could be having the question of whether this should be allowed to happen, this loan rate hike on July 1st. But we have a clear deadline, and I don't know about you, but I am feeling ready to take action. So over the next month, we are going to be working together to stand with Senator Warren and support the Bank on Students Loan Fairness Act. And we're going to be making sure that our stories are heard in Congress and in Washington and in the media and really everywhere. I think we need to sort of rise to the challenge that we heard from Senator Warren, that the way that we win here is by getting out there and getting our stories heard. But again, we only have 4 weeks before student loan rates double, so if we're going to do this, we have to start now. So this coming Friday, which is June 7th, we're going to start by actually bringing our stories straight to Congress. Tomorrow morning, you should get an email from MoveOn with information on how you can sign up to take your student debt stories to Congress. If for some reason you're not on MoveOn's list, come to our website. We'll post it there. And what we'll be doing is providing you with the information and materials that you need to bring your student debt story to Congress, including some fun and attention-grabbing ideas for you to make a splash. But in any case, just some ways for you to share your story with these decision makers that need to hear it, and we'll also provide you with ways to share your pictures from that day with millions of other MoveOn members and beyond. So over the course of the next month, we also need to figure out what other actions we can take in support of the Bank on Students Loan Fairness Act. This gets to some of the organizing that you heard from Alexandra, students organizing at graduations, at commencements, things happening on campus, civil disobedience, all sorts of really powerful organizing is happening around the country right now. We'll need to figure out together what that looks like in local communities, in your community. That will culminate in one big day of action on Monday, June 24th, which is when members of Congress will be home from Washington. So stay tuned for more on that. Look for an email tomorrow. Please join us in bringing your student debt stories to Congress this Friday. And, here we go. This is it. So thank you again so much to all of our speakers for joining us tonight. Especially a warm thank you to Senator Elizabeth Warren and to the over 10,000 of you who joined us for this gathering, for this conversation. Let's keep it moving. Thank you so much.